Chapter 11 Jurisdiction of Church Courts. 11-1 These assemblies are altogether distinct from the civil magistracy, and have no jurisdiction in political or civil affairs. They have no power to inflict temporal pains and penalties, but their authority is, in all respects, moral and spiritual. 11-2 The jurisdiction of church courts is only ministerial and declarative, and relates to the doctrines and precepts of Christ, to the order of the church, and to the exercise of discipline. First, they can make no laws binding the conscience, but may frame symbols of faith, bear testimony against error in doctrine and immorality in practice, within or without the church, and decide cases of conscience. Secondly, they have power to establish rules for the government, discipline, worship, and extension of the church, which must be agreeable to the doctrines relating thereto contained in the Scriptures, the circumstantial details only of these matters being left to the Christian prudence and wisdom of church officers and courts. Thirdly, they possess the right to require obedience to the laws of Christ. Hence, they admit those qualified to sealing ordinances and to their respective offices, and they exclude the disobedient and disorderly from such offices or from sacramental privileges. The highest censure to which their authority extends is to cut off the contumacious and impenitent from the congregation of believers. Moreover, they possess all the administrative authority necessary to give effect to these powers. 11-3 All church courts are one in nature, constituted of the same elements, possessed inherently of the same kinds of rights and powers, and differing only as the Constitution may provide. When, however, according to scriptural example, and needful to the purity and harmony of the whole church, disputed matters of doctrine and order arising in the lower courts are referred to the higher courts for decision, such referrals shall not be so exercised as to impinge upon the authority of the lower court. 11-4 For the orderly and efficient dispatch of ecclesiastical business, it is necessary that the sphere of action of each court should be distinctly defined. The session exercises jurisdiction over a single church, the presbytery over what is common to the ministers, sessions, and churches within a prescribed district, and the General Assembly over such matters as concern the whole church. The jurisdiction of these courts is limited by the express provisions of the Constitution. Every court has the right to resolve questions of doctrine and discipline seriously and reasonably proposed, and in general to maintain truth and righteousness, condemning erroneous opinions and practices which tend to the injury of the peace, purity, or progress of the church. Although each court exercises exclusive original jurisdiction over all matters especially belonging to it, the lower courts are subject to the review and control of the higher courts in regular gradation. These courts are not separate and independent tribunals, but they have a mutual relation, and every act of jurisdiction is the act of the whole church performed by it through the appropriate organ. Chapter 12 The Church Session. 12-1 The church session consists of the pastor, associate pastor or pastors, if there be any, and the ruling elders of a church. If there are 4 or more ruling elders, the pastor and 2 ruling elders shall constitute a quorum. If there are fewer than 4 ruling elders, the pastor and 1 ruling elder shall constitute a quorum. Assistant pastors, although not members of the session, may be invited to attend and participate in discussion without vote. When a church has no pastor and there are 5 or more ruling elders, 3 shall constitute a quorum. If there are less than 5 ruling elders, 2 shall constitute a quorum. If there is only 1 ruling elder, he does not constitute a session, but he should take spiritual oversight of the church, should represent it at presbytery, should grant letters of dismission, and should report to the presbytery any matters needing the action of a church court. Any session, by a majority vote of its members, may fix its own quorum, provided that it is not smaller than the quorum stated in these paragraphs. 12-2 The pastor is, by virtue of his office, the moderator of the session. In the pastor's absence, If any emergency should arise requiring immediate action, the session may elect one of its members to preside. The quorum for such emergency meeting being, as in the case of a church with no pastor in 12-1, should prudential reasons at any time make it advisable for a minister other than the pastor to preside, the pastor may, with the concurrence of the session, invite a minister of the same presbytery to perform this service. 12-3. When a church is without a pastor, the moderator of the session may be either a minister appointed for that purpose by the presbytery with consent of the session, or one invited by the session to preside on a particular occasion, or one of its own members elected to preside. In juridical cases, the moderator shall be a minister of the presbytery to which the church belongs. 12-4. Associate or assistant pastors may substitute for the pastor as moderator of the session as at the discretion of the pastor and session. 12-5. The church session is charged with maintaining the spiritual government of the church, for which purpose it has power. A. To inquire into the knowledge, principles, and Christian conduct of the church members under its care, to censure those found delinquent, to see that parents do not neglect to present their children for baptism, to receive members into the communion of the church, to remove them for just cause, to grant letters of dismissal to other churches, which when given to parents shall always include the names of their non-communing baptized children. B. To examine, ordain, and install ruling elders and deacons on their election by the church, and to require these officers to devote themselves to their work, to examine the records of the proceedings of the deacons, to approve and adopt the budget. C. To approve actions of special importance affecting church property. D. To call congregational meetings when necessary, to establish and control Sunday schools and Bible classes with special reference to the children of the church. To establish and control all special groups in the church, such as men in the church, women in the church, and special Bible study groups. To promote world missions. To promote obedience to the Great Commission in its totality at home and abroad. To order collections for pious uses. E. To exercise, in accordance with the Directory for Worship, authority over the time and place of the preaching of the Word and the administration of the sacraments, over all other religious services, over the music in the services, and over the uses to which the church building and associated properties may be put, to take the oversight of the singing and the public worship of God, to ensure that the Word of God is preached only by such men as are sufficiently qualified, BCO 4-4, 53-2, 1 Timothy 2:11 and 12, to assemble the people for worship when there is no minister, to determine the best measures for promoting the spiritual interests of the church and congregation. F. To observe and carry out the lawful injunctions of the higher courts, and to appoint representatives to the higher courts, who shall, on their return, make report of their diligence. 12-6. The session shall hold stated meetings at least quarterly. Moreover, the pastor has power to convene the session when he may judge it requisite, and he shall always convene it when requested to do so by any two of the ruling elders. When there is no pastor, it may be convened by two ruling elders. The session shall also convene when directed so to do by the presbytery. 12-7. Every session shall keep an accurate record of its proceedings, which record shall be submitted at least once in every year to the inspection of the presbytery. 12-8. Every session shall keep an accurate record of baptisms, of communing members, of non-communing members, and of the deaths and dismissions of church members. 12-9. Meetings of the sessions shall be opened and closed with prayer.